You better not retire yet because the cost of long-term care could make you go bankrupt. I hear this a lot, man, a lot. In fact, even in Right Capital Software, they say that the default is that the last 2 years of your life, you'll spend in today's dollars, 51,000 a year for the last 2 years of your life for long-term care costs. All right, so if we extrapolate that, and I have it as set as default that you live till you're 90 years old. So if we're sitting here, you're 60 years old today, and you're saying, I can't retire because I'm going to run out of money because of long-term care costs. And then we say, well, Right Capital says 51,000 a year in today's dollars. We take that as a present value. We're going to inflate it at 5.5% a year for healthcare cost inflation. Now you're 60. We're going to have you live until you're 90. So basically, we're going to have 28 years of that just compounding at 5.5% a year for long-term care costs. All right, so 28 years is our end. Compute future value. That means it's going to cost you $228,000 in future dollars for the last 2 years of your life each year. So roughly, what's that? $460,000 is going to cost you for long-term care cost for the last 2 years of your life. And if you're married, that's another $460,000. So between Charlotte and me, we're talking almost $1 million, man. No wonder why people say I can't retire. That's going to bankrupt me. So working an extra couple years will alleviate that? No, silly. Silly. All right, but let's even think about this differently. What's the risk versus reward? I.e., the risk of you that you're taking on by retiring today, given that you're worried about running out of money because of long-term care costs. The risk we just shared with you is about $1 million if we're going to use what Right Capital default is, which I find silly, but I get it. I mean, look, I looked at it just right now. Genworth has a study. I said, oh my goodness, the average cost for nursing home, blah blah blah. All right, so that is the risk, but is it highly probable? What's the likelihood? Well, the likelihood isn't very high. It's just not. Employee Benefits Research Institute has shown us that only about 10% of the population actually spends more than $100,000 in long-term care, out-of-pocket long-term care costs. And that may or may not be true going forward. We don't know. But based on real world people and longitudinal studies where they track these people over time, the same people, that's what they found. I'm pretty comfortable with that. So not a high probability, but the risk is quite high. So would it make sense to keep working to alleviate that risk? Well, and I hear a lot of times, well, you get homeowners insurance. Not likely your home is going to burn down, and if you're 60 years old, it's going to be awfully expensive to buy long-term care insurance. So, well, if you can't get long-term care, you might as well just work a couple more years just to put more money away in. I'm like, okay. My house burns down. If I don't have insurance, my goose is cooked. I'm done. You see what I'm saying? So for $1,000, $1,500 a year, I pay for insurance for the unlikely probability that my house burns down. Okay. So you can make the same argument with long-term care costs. However, the long-term care cost is incredibly expensive relative to homeowners insurance. And what exactly does it insure you? Well, just like a home insurance, it's not likely to happen that you're going to need that. But the reason why it's so expensive is the insurance company says they're not quite sure exactly what they're insuring for. Where a home, they have actuaries who can figure that out. Hold on just a second. But on top of that, with no homeowners insurance, if your house burns down, your goose is cooked. You have nothing. You're done. You see what I'm saying? So for your homeowners insurance, it's pretty simple. You either pay $1,500 a year, $2,000 a year for the rest of your life to avoid the catastrophic issue of your house burning down. All right, and you still need a place to live because if you don't pay the insurance, you still have to go spend the money on something else, i.e., rent or something like that, because you still need a place to live. Obviously, if you have a mortgage, you have to have insurance anyway. With long-term care, though, that it's in terms of you working or not, well, that's a big difference because now you're saying, I'm taking on a risk that's not very high, but to alleviate that risk, I can still do something that's not enjoyable, that's actually might be detrimental to my health, if that makes sense. So you shouldn't really compare long-term care cost with in terms of working or buying an insurance policy with getting homeowners insurance policy, covering the unlikely thing that your house could burn out, because there is a pain point, obviously, in terms of long-term care that is not there with buying homeowners insurance. The pain point is you're going to have to pay for a significantly amount relative to your labor. It takes away your ability to do something exciting, something more enjoyable, i.e. retiring. And you might actually be working that's actually killing you, literally. So buying homeowners insurance actually doesn't hurt you. There's no physical dilemma that you're dealing with. It does cost you money, I grant you. And there is not a high probability of your house burning down, I grant you. But it doesn't actually, there's no negative other than some cash flow that goes out. Staying at work to pay for long-term care, though, that is not likely to happen. Well, in of itself, that's where the argument of buying insurance would be. And is, if I have to work for 5 more years to make sure I have enough money to put me in a nursing home that's not likely to happen, what are those 5 years of opportunity costs? What are those things hurting me mentally, physically? What's the opportunity cost of not having retired as opposed to just retiring and enjoying my life? The difference, so we both have two things that could be quite expensive if these things occur, and they're not likely to occur. Nursing home costs, not likely. And long-term, and your house burning down, not likely. Both those things are expensive and could be very debilitating financially. That's for sure. We know that. So if you can't get long-term care insurance coverage, right, then what happens, and we'll talk about long-term care insurance as a way to offset this, which we'll share with you in just a second. If you can't get long-term care insurance coverage, then you say, well, I better keep working because I can't have that happen. All right, but unlike homeowners insurance, long-term care, you're working for long-term care, you're missing out on years so you can enjoy your life. And if your job is literally making you mentally exhausted, physically threatened in terms of, you're putting on weight, you're high blood pressure, you're just not sleeping well, that's not good, man. That's not good for your immune system. On top of that, you got to think about the long-term care itself. The likelihood of you needing it for a significant amount of money isn't high. Secondly, was another source that we could provide for long-term care if we needed it, again, under the unlikelihood, would be to sell your house. You see what I'm saying? So you always need a place to live. So your homeowner's insurance is covering your dwelling. Your long-term care cost, if you have insurance, is covering something that probably won't happen, and it has no good value at all right now. There's nothing. Look, I have long-term care insurance. I have long-term care. So I'm not saying don't get it. I'm just saying when my youngest is out, I'm dropping it, man. I'm dropping it. Because we have this big fat house. If we need a long-term care facility, we'll sell the house to go to a long-term care facility, which is what everybody does. I guarantee people have done that same thing. And I imagine some of you say, yeah, but Grammy costs $6,000 a month. Okay. That's the exception. It's not the rule, man. And by the way, if your house is worth $250,000, we'll just say $250,000, divide that by 12, or divide by $6,000, $250,000, divide by $6,000 a month, we'd have that house for 3.5 years. That house would pay for 3.5 years of nursing home coverage. That's $6,000 a month. Would that be enough? I don't know. But you see where we're starting to go here. We're starting to say, okay, so we're taking on these risks of working longer, paying premiums for something that's not likely to happen, that gives me no benefit at all right now. None. What might give you the ability to sleep better at night. Okay, that's why I have long-term care. And that's why I have long-term care, because I have 4 kids. My income is the primary source of income for my family, and we have a debt. And if I were to need a incapacitated scenario where my wife couldn't take care of me at home, or she needed in-home health care, there's no way she could afford it if my income stops. That's all there is to it. So we have long-term care. Now, again, the minute those days are over where the kids are out of the house, the mortgage is paid off, I'm not going to have it. I'm not going to keep it. And by the way, it gets more and more expensive each and every year because the premiums increase as I age. That's one of the drawbacks with the new long-term care insurance premiums is that they're not locked in, and they can't be. The insurance company's taking on way too much risk. But again, the long-term care, it has no positive thing for me. Let's just say once that time comes, I'll be 60 years old, kids are out of the house, mortgage is paid. There's no positive thing for me at all in terms of providing long-term care, paying for insurance, or continuing to work. Whereas homeowners insurance, the reason it's positive is because it does allow me to know I have a dwelling. If my house goes kaput because of a fire or something like that, I'll always have a dwelling. You don't get that with long-term care insurance. So on top of that, it could be, I would argue, it's probably a net cost to you physically as well. The simple facts are, if you work in a crappy old job, you're doing it solely because you're worried about running out of money due to long-term care costs, I think you're making a big mistake, man. I think you're making a big mistake. I really am. What you should be doing is working to pay down your debt if you have some. Because once you're debt free, all bets are off. All bets are off. That's my take on the matter. I hope that makes sense. I hope that analogy makes sense. I know it's a little bit of a diatribe here, but I was just reading this article. I'm like, man, and I'm just like, people are so scared. It's like the freaking thing with Corona. People are so frightened by this thing. It's crazy to me. I'm sitting there thinking, so you're going to continue at your crappy old job, which is grinding you down because of this worry of something that is not likely to happen. And if it does, you already have a resource, which is a paid off home. I find it heartbreaking. All right, well, love to hear your comments. We'll see you. Good boy.